my PhD. There you go. It's my pleasure to be here today to share with you part of my PhD research. When I say part, which is not finalized yet. So I've done about 2/3 of my data collection, and the rest of them will be finalized in the rest 2 months. So my research topic is about when expectations meet reality, exploring Chinese tertiary graduates' post-study transitional experiences in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Aotearoa is a Maori word, literally means New Zealand. It can be translated as long white cloud as well. Okay, so probably a little bit introduction about the research, that why I'm so keen to do it. Because I'm currently also working full-time as an international marketing advisor for Polytechnic in Wellington, New Zealand. In my daily job, I have a lot of interaction with my students from my home country, which is China. Interestingly, in my daily communication with them, I found that most of their concerned areas, even though from the outlook of them may vary, but ultimately they are related to two aspects: employment and migration. For example, if we told a student that their attendance rate to certain classes was quite low, lower than the threshold, the response I have was always like, oh my God, how is it going to impact my visa application in the future? And it's not abnormal to see at the beginning of each new trimester, when we're busy doing the orientation, then we will always have students coming to tell us that they want to withdraw or change their enrolled programs completely to a different one. And the reasons might be by doing the previous programs, then they will have very limited chance of getting the New Zealand residency. So all those encounters really inspire me as the former international students myself to investigate more, explore more the reasons behind, to reflect on my previous journey and explore the reasons behind to see how I can guide them more properly. This is why I'm so adapted into this research area. A little bit story though. Okay, in terms of the research background over here, just want to let you know that historically, New Zealand is regarded as one of the second-tier evolving destinations, migrants receiving country. It encouraged skilled migration, in particular through a study to residence pathway that's more generous than most of Western countries. However, recent research has shown that the country is now narrowing this pathway. Under the current immigration policy, international students can gain permanent residence in New Zealand through a two-step route of transition: from study to work. Step 1, from study to work. Step 2, work to residence. So as you can see over here, the key words is work, employment. Although employment is a key contributor for Chinese students to return, international students, especially Chinese students, to return in New Zealand, previous research has found that they lack confidence in future prospects in the host country like New Zealand. Meanwhile, there's heated media coverage reporting that Chinese students been disadvantaged at their post-study transition stage, and their experience in the labor market, workplace, and migration field are underexplored. So this diagram just outlines the evolution of New Zealand's post-study work policy since 1991, when the bridging of education and migration started to take shape. As you can see, there are not too many changes in this policy during the first decade. Until 2002, it became clear that the two-step migration formed the pathway from education to permanent residence. Since then, this system has undergone several rounds of overhaul and becomes tighter on rules and regulations for students seeking New Zealand residency. For example, in 2008, the post-study work rights have been changed to include the higher ratio of New Zealand recognized tertiary qualifications, and a skilled job offer became essential to secure residency. And most recently in 2018, the removal of employer-assisted work visa and replace it with a 1 to 3 years post-study open work visa. All those changes greatly influence international students' trajectory in New Zealand. Therefore, my research, as I just mentioned, my research intends to fill in such a gap by exploring our Chinese tertiary graduates' post-study transition in New Zealand. To be more specific, it seeks to answer below two overarching research questions. Number one, what were the expectations of Chinese tertiary graduates to employment and migration before they come into New Zealand, and the extent to which they were met? Number two, what were the challenges impacting on their post-study transition in New Zealand, and how did they tackle all this? The current research was carried out within the paradigm of international education and migration. Therefore, strong and weak ties in social network, the value expectancy model, and culture fusion theory were selected to explore the research questions. In terms of the research design, qualitative method was employed. This included 20 semi-structured one-on-one interviews that I've done so far. They were either done face-to-face or through the digital platforms like social platforms like WeChat, Facebook, or Zoom. The interview questions were mainly interrogating from three aspects of motives and expectations: their employment seeking and workplace communication experience, their migratory endeavors and outcomes. All interviews were audio recorded, with the data being transcribed and analyzed through the qualitative research software Endeavor. There's no specific age range for the participants of my research, but preferences are given to those who have graduated within recent 5 to 10 years, so the study results can better reflect the current situation and future change. Some demographic data criteria apply. First of all, they came to New Zealand as Chinese international students, ideally up to 2010 and after. And then they attain at least one New Zealand tertiary qualification, ideally in New Zealand qualification framework, level 7 degree or above. And then they gain the post-graduation paid employment in New Zealand, acquired or in the process of seeking permanent residency in New Zealand, which is optional because not everyone has been through that or even started that process yet, even though they have the strong intention to do so. So the participants were recruited either through convenience sampling, like snowballing technique, or through third-party channels, like I just mentioned, alumni network or social media platforms. Okay, some findings that I have summarized so far. There are altogether 5 themes with 14 sub-themes emerging from the interviews that I've done. The first significant theme was the various responses on expectations to employment and migration. Although most participants mentioned they did some research on New Zealand's prospect before embarking their learning journey, they also admitted that their expectations were initially rooted in cultural, educational, and migratory aspects. They lack understanding on the employment seeking and workplace culture in New Zealand. This results in the discrepancy between their expectations and experience in the post-study transition. So in the interviews that I've summarized, unexpected and frustrated are the 2 most used words when asked to describe this process. Nearly all respondents mentioned the challenges of seeking employment during their study and after graduation. Examples included like scarce response on their shotgun approach to job search, They interrupted employment because of the limited visa condition, and they've been declined on interviews due to that they are either not qualified for managerial role or overqualified for entry-level jobs. Meanwhile, although the close connection in their social network enables Chinese graduates quicker access to the labor market in New Zealand, it also brings up the problem of exploitation by the co-national employers. It's actually quite hard to establish the clue on exploitation because not everyone is willing to share, but it was talked about implicitly by a lot of respondents. The most common forms I found that they were like a volunteering or internship job on unpaid basis, which normally could be carried out into their formal employment. And what even worse was the fact that some students were required to fill up the salary gap between their underpaid wage and the standards set by immigration in order to be qualified for their residency application. There are other hardships that they've experienced, like extended working hours, unrealistic workloads, and deprivation of dignity at work. In terms of communication in the workplace, it's found that language barrier and culture-related breakdowns are still common for our respondents, although they've gained a tertiary level qualification in New Zealand and have been living here for a period of time. According to them, working language was easier to understand. It was normally the small talk that hindered the communication with their colleagues. Those students who managed to adapt to the workplace culture were able to mobilize the communication strategies like tactics and creative problem-solving skills, as well as demonstrating their positive attitude at work. Lastly, there's a growing trend of returning home among Chinese graduates after being through their post-study challenges, which is mainly due to the unmet expectations and the tightening of immigration policy under the current pandemic situation. So here comes my favorite part. So what's the implication of my research for all the stakeholders? Firstly, I believe my research result can be used as a reference for tertiary institutions when admitting international students overseas. It's really important to get them better prepared at the beginning of the study journey. One consideration could be to incorporate the employability model in the curriculum design for international students and help them to establish connection with industry players while studying to cultivate more work-ready graduates. Meanwhile, prospective students looking for studying overseas are supposed to do more in-depth research on different prospects of the host country, like comparing information received from different channels and cross-checking them before making decisions are the best practices. For recruitment agents, especially those licensed immigration advisors, painting a realistic picture about the employment and migration situation is as important as promoting the programs themselves. Government agencies, they need to engage with both education institutions and industry employers before issuing policies related to international study, work, and migration to ensure the sustainability of our export education industry and the supply of skills needed for national economy. So basically, that's all about my presentation. I've lead the Q&A section at the end. There we go. Thank you. Oops. That's it for my presentation. Thank you. Okay. Looks like some technical problem with my audio. Okay.
We
Can you
can
guys
hear
hear
you,
me?
no problem. Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. Great. Cool. Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. As I just mentioned. Okay. Oh, awesome. So we will have the next presentation about the role of religious migration in the SAARC countries. So hand it over to you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I need to just share my slides. Is it okay?
Yeah, sorry for interruption, but they say how many minutes do we have to present our study? We can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So each presentation will be given like 20 minutes, like
Okay,
20
good.
to 25 minutes. Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is it okay? Uh,
Yep. No
Thank you
problem.
very much. No. Yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and the global participants and all the scholars. Thank you very much to join and just hear very few comments and research works done by three people, especially myself, Dr. Muhammad Abdi Abdurazak, Professor Jinjiang Jiang. Both we are together in Shanghai Jiaotong University School of Media and Communication, and Professor Jinjiang Jiang, he was my supervisor, PhD supervisor. This is not my PhD work. My PhD work was the Facebook exploration by young Bangladeshi Facebook users. That is different case. But in meanwhile, 2015 to 2018, in this time frame, we have conducted a small research work that is real of religious migration in SARC countries. Here, SARC, it's a form, the full abbreviation is South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation. You know, it's like, say, for example, European Union within 27 countries. Here, the SARC is just combined with 8 South Asian countries, including the India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan. So, if you hear the name of these SARC nations, I mean the 8 countries, you can understand the scenario, socioeconomic status, policy dialogue, and everything you can design in your mind. So, I just we just conducted the research because there are a lot of migration related research and works here, but there is no religious migration, especially to target this region, because here the 4 specific global religious are available here. The Muslim, the Christian, the Hinduism, the Buddhist, all are here. Even the leading countries, say Pakistan and Bangladesh, the majority are Muslim. Sri Lanka, the majority, the Buddhist, and even the Hindus dominated in India, and Afghanistan also the Muslim countries. The Maldives is also the Muslim countries, and other religious peoples are also here. So I'm going to the DIF now. First of all, that I told earlier, here is the SARC nations, all the countries you are seeing. This is the location map, and very interestingly, the Bangladesh is very small country. You can look at in the right corner from my decks, but India is a dominating country. All of the 80% of the land area, even the economic activities, the industrial economies are occupied by India. So other countries are very small. So obviously, the moving fate from one country to another country is targeting to India, obviously, because here this country is playing the vital role. to accept or reject the migrant people, because you know the last year the Indian PM Narendra Modi and his party, the BJP, they have started the NC, NOC, NCR, you know, the uh, Hindu religious people from any country from SARC region, they can enter in India and they will get the citizenship from India. But other religious people, say Muslim and others, they can come to India as a tourist, but they cannot stay here and they will not get the residency from India. So this is a very complicated policy adopted by Indian Assembly, and that's why the religious migration is very much under threat. I think so, and we have that. So we just studied the leading English dailies from all of the countries, sub countries, especially the English dailies. They are well circulated and popular in that region, particularly in their country based. So here we have received the Daily Outlook from Afghanistan, Daily Star from Bangladesh, and Kunsal from Bhutan, the Times of India from New Delhi, Himalayan Times, Nepal, Maldives Times, Dawn, and Daily Mirror. And you know, very interestingly, the Daily Star. This is very much popular and wide circulated in Bangladesh, as well as the government sometimes took the policy dialogues and navigation from their editorial and the reporting and the feature writing and so many things. The same case happened in Pakistan case. The Dawn is the leading newspapers, and they have the attractive power to the government to bring the very important issues in forefront. So that is the main issue, and we have taken these newspapers because they are the leading in that region, as well as they have some potentiality to motivate the government while they are going to adopt the new policies and other things. And if you see the real of religious, what I told earlier, the Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, all the countries, they have some leading, dominating religions. For example, the India, that is the Hinduism, they occupied and they're leading all the society. And in the case of Bangladesh and Pakistan, the Muslim are the major groups. And so here just a glimpse of the symbolic and the holy place and the leading leader of all religious, just to want to show just for presentation purpose. And if you see the left side, the figure, the Islam, I mean the Muslim people in that region is 29%. Hinduism was the most. They are 64% are living in South Asian territory. And other religions you can see, the Sikhism, Buddhism, and Christianity, they are very minor level, only 2% of total population in each particular, I mean the whole South Asian region, because there are some population fractions, because India is very big country, so the more than 150 crore people are living in India. Bangladesh is very small country, but 2.5 million people are living here, billion, sorry. So there are different scenario, the population and the religious people in different country. And here, this is our research questions. The first one was, how did the South Asian leading English dailies portray the religious migration within SAC nations? Here, we don't consider the migration issues, same the worker migration or the student migration, like the Professor Daisy tried to show about the Chinese people from Australia to take the educational agenda or the any skill work migration. We don't consider in that part. We just only focus on how the South Asian leading newspapers are just twisting the navigation dialogue relevant with the policy level, and only for the religious migrate people. And here, the second discussions was what migration policies did focus in their news treatment. And here we considered not only the state jacket news, we analyzed the feature news also, and even the editorial, all these 8 newspapers we have considered. And obviously the time frame was 2015 to 2018, these 3 years. we just look after. And there are so many clash, political and I mean the intellectual clash in between Pakistan and India. So we don't consider any cases out of this time frame. Only we focus the 2015 and 2018 and all the newspapers, editorial features, and everything within this time frame. And here we just try to focus all of our research components. We took the very commonly worldwide the theory, the push pull theory. All the people who studied a little story relevant to the migration, about this theory. And the Pennsylvania University scholar, we know the Sun Lee, he and the other people, day by day it has constructed, revised, and so many things. Here we have a very short time, so I'm not going in depth, but just main component of this theory, some push factors and some pull factors. And so from the original country, some push factors inspired them to switch the migrant people to the destination and the targeting country. And these two factors, I mean the two P, we have seen and analyzed, but in our study and research work, we find another P, that is the we are interested, and we have seen proved that another P are needed to enrich this theory. And I shall share that one. You can see here that was our conceptual research framework, our proposed one, because we have seen the first, the location A. I mean the push factors. There are a lot of factors, but we have seen the net jobs, little opportunities, old conditions, and even the political fear. Now the Indian Muslims are threatening even some minority groups in Bangladesh and Pakistan. I mean, the Sikhs and Hindus, they are under threat, some political fear. So these political fears are very important uh, in regarding the religious migration. And even you see the less religious freedom also, because in Pakistan, I know the Punjab province, even the Sikhs, the very prestigious and religious temple, the main Guru Baba, the Guru Dwara, the local language, they are very much under threat. Even the freedom is very much limited. Some cases in Bangladesh, also southern part of Bangladesh, some temple, the Indian, I mean the Hindu religious, they are not very much open. They cannot organize the, I mean the religious festival very openly, like the majority group, the Muslims and others. So there are a lot of the really lost, I mean the less freedom of religious purposes, and discrimination also is a very important part. And if you see the second P, the location B, I mean this is the pull theories. I mean the pull factors. Here are a lot of things, but very interestingly, we have things from the independent of Bangladesh, 1971, and independent of Hindustan and Pakistan, 1947. We find that a lot of religious people migrate each countries. Say some people migrate from India to Bangladesh and Pakistan. Those are Muslims. And Hindu people from Bangladesh and in Pakistan, they move to India. But there is no problem. They think that India is little bit developed rather than Bangladesh, even Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives. If you go to the Google, you can find lot of stories, lot of factors that the people love India, not only the religious purpose, maybe the job opportunities, maybe the unrest situation, the communal factors, lot of things. But very interestingly, we find that the people, I mean the real Hindu and Sikh people, they left Pakistan and Bangladesh, moved to India for the better opportunities, for the better living conditions, everything. But interestingly, this time they are changing their plan, and they left in India again. They are returning to their home country. at last. I mean, very interestingly, they say, for example, America is the dream country, all the less developed countries. I'm going to India, just to think that I'm going to India, I'm enjoying here and everything. But 10 years later, I'm returned back from India. Why? From America. Why? Maybe there are some little problem. That's why I'm a migrated people. I have a very good hope, and I left Bangladesh and living to America, the global leader. But after a few years, I'm returning back to Bangladesh again. The same scenario we find that the Hindu religious people going to India because that is the most important and holy place for Indian for the Hindu people, because the Ram Krishna, the very motivated religious leader, the birthplace that is in India. Even the we hear the religious story, even the fictions, the Ramayana and other things, all are surrounding in India and neighboring countries. So the Hindu people from India, sorry, from Bangladesh and Pakistan, they target to India to live there, the great opportunities, even the religious freedom. But these days they are returning back. So because of the factors are here, first they choose the wrong destination. After leaving few years, they are hopeless. Maybe when they left Bangladesh, they think that our economic condition will be totally changed in India, and we will get very, very much comfortable status as scenario. But that is they lost their hope. And even some cases, the security they are not getting in India. Even the Indian Muslims migrated to Bangladesh and Pakistan, they are not getting the that I mean the benefits what they desire or hope earlier before the migration. And mostly we have seen the Muslims, Hindus who left from Bangladesh to India, they are returning, and the Sikh people migrated from Pakistan to India, they are also returning to back in Pakistan. That's why we suggested that the push pull theory, they need the another P, that one the return to home back country again. And that is, we saw the double A location, first on the A, second one the B, and third one the double A. Because of double A, the location country, they migrated from the home country to the target country. They again return back from the target country to home country. I think I'm taking long. Here is some of the published news statement in the dailies. If you see I mean the left side, the selected media, the Daily Outlook of Afghanistan, and all the medias here. We have considered the Straight Jacket report. I told earlier the article and the features that is being from the social media expert, these statistics are not so strong and so motivated to navigate the country-based policy level, because it's very little. If you see the 2015, 16, and even 18, the story level, even the editorial, this is sorry, the features, this is very much rare cases. And the big country, I mean the India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. But here, very interestingly, the Maldives, you can look at the scenario about the status, and the Sri Lanka. There is no feature stories relating to religious migration. They have a lot of stories in other migration to leave the, I mean the target destination of each country, even the recruiting, labor migration, lot of things. Their newspapers are giving the coverage. But in case of for this South Asian territory, the religious people, it's very poor status we have found. And if we just see the statistical level, you can see here the Afghanistan, you can see the bigger portion. I mean, almost very close in the case of Afghanistan and even the Maldives. And you can see here this is actually the portrayed scenario in combining all the stories. Here is not the particular features or particular the jacket, bullet jacket articles. All the things we have just accumulated in on figures, and here is the present tense we have seen. And if you see the policy level, this is the very important part of our the small research works. Here you can see the middle, the target country. The first one, the Times of India, the India's biggest and largest and circulated newspaper. They printed and they just given the treatment, the news and features and other things in religious migrated people target to Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and Nepal. And the policy level, the issues we have find out and read out and analyze, all the stories they emphasize just legal and illegal entrance from Pakistani Muslims, from Afghanistani Sheikhs, Nepali Muslims, Hindus, and Pakistani Sheikh and Muslim. They always saying, try to say the Muslim people and Hindu people, they are crossing the border illegally at different. And more interestingly, Bangladesh is surrounded in three sides by India. One side is Bay of Bengal. So we have a very longest border with India. The Pakistan, they have the border, even the Nepal, and very interestingly, the Nepali people and Indian people, they no need the visa and other legal documents. Just only for the national ID card, they can interchange their citizenship from Nepal to India and India to Nepal. So that is the open border almost. But recently, there are the political chaos and China, India interventions. So some political and policy level changes has already happened, and we have seen every time the drama is happened, the Nepal political situation. So that's why the Dawn of Pakistan, their policy direction always complain against India. The Sikh people are going to India and return back to Pakistan. Even some big portion of Hindu people from Sindh province of India, they are returning back from India to Pakistan again. So that is very interesting. That's why the Dawn tried to focus on every time the complain and complain, where the Times of India, they tried to focus on the legal and illegal entrance. And some cases they welcome the Hindu religious people from Pakistan to India and Hindu religious people from Bangladesh to India. And the Delhi State Bangladesh, they are, I think, the middle
Excuse me, Abdul
positions.
Razak.
They are not.
Yeah, your time is almost up.
Yes,
If you
Professor.
can wrap it up, that would be very grateful. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Professor. Yeah. Thank you very much. And if you see the Daily Mirror Sri Lanka, they are trying to show always the positive image in South Asian religious migration. And the Himalayan Times, Nepal, Nepal and India, they have a very good tie in all cases, even the trade, economic policy, even the political everything. So they, India, the targeting people and the policy people, they adopt in Times of India, the Himalayan Times of Nepal, they also try to follow that one. And the Kunsal, the Bhutan, they try to establishing the rights again. So there is a time problem. So thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, to remind me. And if you raise any questions, that session, I can try to brief the other issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Zach. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for your
Sure.
presentation. Then we can move on to the next presentation by Diego, which is about construct the validity in communication studies.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So now I can share my own screen. Continue. Yes, please. And there we go. So I hope that you can see my screen right now. Yes?
Yes, no problem.
Good. I'm very happy that Abdul Razak is also an MD, so now he can also cure my neck pain from reading those tilted slides going through. Hey, thank you very much for being here. My topic is warning. It could be very boring because I will be mostly talking about methods and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that kind of research, it's going to be interesting. Otherwise, I'm sorry, it's going to be very boring from the beginning. Let me remind you about that. And so for this study, basically for this project, which by the way, I think that I've already shared it with Stephanie some while ago, and still I'm in the process of rewriting it and getting rejected from all over the world, but I will not give it up and try to make the best out of it. So the whole idea of it is that to revise and have a look at the validity, construct, reliability of one of the most used and important communication construct in the field of communication. So I'm talking about PRCA24. Basically, PRCA24 is a scale that measures communication apprehension in 4 different contexts. So it measures it at the context of group, interpersonal or dyadic, or public, and also in meetings, which are small groups. The whole idea behind it is that scale was developed at 1982. So it was a time that is one of the few exclusively communication construct that was developed. And since then, it has been used by many people, both in the United States and outside of United States, to compare the amount of anxiety that people have during communication in different cultures. So that's why it's also very important intercultural or cross-cultural communication construct. And it has been widely used by so many people. And I assume that it's the most used communication construct. But recently I've noticed that how the scale, the survey, has been used a little bit more or too liberal by people. The initial validation of the construct was in the United States and using student sample. And after that, it has been used in many countries, in China, on the top of my head, Japan, Korea, lots of European nations, in Central Americas, and also in the Middle East, to some extent in Africa. Most of them fail ever to report how valid the construct is in their context. And it would just assume that because it was valid in the United States, so it is valid everywhere. So that's how I'm trying to have a look at the things, because I believe that since 1982 or 81, when the scale was developed, the current scale format, many changes has happened to us. The most important thing, internet. Back at time, we had a much more clear vision of what is public, or what is group, or what is meeting, or so on. But nowadays, with internet, with social media, lots of those things have changed. So what is public? Like if you're talking to your friend, for example, in a Twitter account, which is open to everyone, is it a dyadic or is it a public thing? So lots of those questions are important here. That's one thing. The other thing is the validation tests originally was done using student samples. And while it could be appropriate in some cases, in most of cases, it could be a little bit problematic because students are a very specific group of people, usually very high educated, so young, and basically also they are very good at responding to the questionnaires and so on. So basically the results that we get from them sometimes could be considered as overgeneralized. So that's why basically I tried to have a look at the construct from another point of view. What I did, I tried to collect data from normal American people and have a look at it to see that how reliable and how valid it is. So to put it in a very short sentences, reliability is the measurement of how accurate your measurement is. For example, if I measure your communication apprehension and it's 65, how sure I am, how much I'm sure that that 65 is really an accurate number. That's reliability. But validity in nutshell is the measurement of how much the things that I claim to be measured is basically measured. So if I claim that I'm measuring your communication apprehension, am I measuring that, or am I measuring, for example, your shyness or another form of anxiety, like computer anxiety, mathematical anxiety, and stuff like that? So basically, even within validity measurements, we have different types of validity. For example, we have face validity. We just look at the question to basically make sure that, yeah, this question, like from lexicon point of view, from vocabulary point of view, basically is related to measuring your communication apprehension. I'm so sorry that it's so boring right now. I will promise that it's getting even more boring. So even I'm not interested in that part of the story. I'm particularly looking at a very specific kind of validity in this measurement, which is basically, let's put it this way, we call it construct validity. So convergent validity and discriminant validity. Let me explain it what it means. So this is PRCA 24, okay? So it asks basically, it has 24 observations or items which measure 4 different latent variables. They are latent variables. And all of these latent variables in the second order, they measure in general communication apprehension that you have. So when I say convergent validity, it means that these 6 measurements, how they contribute to these factors that they are related to. If they contribute a lot to that, so the amount of convergent validity is high. Then we have discriminant validities. It's like how much this item, which should be related to, for example, group, is also related to meeting or measuring meeting or measuring a dyadic or the other ones. So if that amount is also so low, we say it's like, okay, discriminant validity is also established. So to put in a very simple language, if it is simple, we measure the shared variance, the average variance of these items and compare it with the variance of these items with other basically latent variables. So how much of let's say like these 6 items, how much they explain the variance of these items, convergent validity, it should be high. And by high, we mean like statistically specific number. And how much it measures, these 6 items measures like the variance of other items, that should be low for us to say like, okay, we have a discriminant validity. So for a scale to be working, we should have these 2 things. Now, normally people just use CFA and like confirmatory factor analysis. And when it says like confirmatory factor analysis is okay, then they say like, okay, then my model works. But no, because confirmatory factor analysis is generally based on comparing the chi-square of a constraint model to one and an unconstrained model, which is basically supposed to be very similar together, which in the real life is very difficult to get. I don't get into there even. To put it in a very simple language, again, this is what I'm going to do. I measure PRCA, okay? So if everything is fine, it says like, okay, the original model is okay, fine. I'm not touching it. But if the construct validity is not okay, Then I do an exploratory factor analysis to see that, okay, what new constructs coming out of that? And then I test that by confirmatory factor analysis, construct validity of that. If that's fine, then I said like, okay, here you go. I have a new factorial setting. If at any point one of the things basically cannot be understood or worked out or take out of the sample that I have, I say like, okay, no valid factorial setting could be fine here. Now, here is my sample. I collected the data of 920, 12 people, mostly females, most of them with basically university degrees. And as I also use Qualtrics to collect data for me. So all of these people basically answer the questions over the internet, which is related to the things that I meant. Now, you remember that I talked about the average variance extracted? Here you go. That number should be over 5. Then we say like we have convergent validity. As you can see, I have. But this is the shared variance. You can see that the number that I have here, the average here, it should be lower than this. Like this 60 should be lower than this should be lower than this should be lower than this, which it's not. So it means that the items that I have basically are connected strongly to other latent variables in my model, which shouldn't be like this. Another way of measuring discriminant validity is to calculate the square root of AVE. Here, as you can see, I have all of them. And these should be bigger than the correlation of this with the other items, like bigger than all of these things. As you can see, it is lower than that. So I don't have discriminant validity. What should I do? I do an EFA, exploratory factor analysis. I had to put away 3 items, and I'm not teaching statistics here, so I just leave it away, not showing off my method knowledge. As you can see, this is the new model that I have. In my new model, you can see that I have AVE over 5, and it is bigger than my maximum shared variance, and basically this part is also fine. So the new model that I basically explained, which comes into 2 factors, one factor just measuring all of the tens items, and the other one just measuring your basically being comfortable in communication with other. It's working. For example, look at this one. It says like, I dislike participating in a group discussion. So it tells you that how tense you are. But this one basically tells you, generally, I'm comfortable while participating in group discussion. This is all of the things that basically show that how you're confident in communicating with other people. And that's what I call them. It's tense, and I call these confident, okay? And now, as you can see here, statistically, I show that my model works pretty fine. Okay, now, what does this thing tell us? Couple of issues. First of all, how important, in a nutshell, how important it is for us to just review our scales, our measurement every now and then, because people generate theories out of these findings. Policy makers make policy based on those things. So we need to make sure that our measurements are valid and reliable. That's one thing. The other thing is that do not trust student samples so much. These guys know how to fill out questionnaires. They just do it in 5 minutes. Everything is fine. They trick you into the idea that, yeah, I'm getting valid information. You need to test it with other people, different ages, different educational background and stuff like that. But the most important thing is the issue of the reverse code items. We have so many reverse coded items in PRC 24. So what is happening here is these reverse coded items take a lot of cognitive concentration out of the participants. And basically, make it very difficult for them to answer the questions. More and more people nowadays are advocating for removing away these reverse coded items. But my suggestion is this: even if you decided to, because some people say like, okay, reverse coded items are just like turns in the road. So if the road is all the way straight, then it could get very boring and people just like get used to it, and it could be problematic. But when you have every now and then a turn in the road, that it makes people to get conscious and do some movements. Even if you want those turns on your road, do not use them in your final calculation of the models. Let it be in the model if you very much interested having them, but do not take them into calculation of your models. So that's pretty much it. So I hope that my boring research is not as boring as I supposed to consider, and you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. I'm open to the questions.
Thank you, Diaco, for providing such in-depth insight about how to measure our communication studies in a scientific way.
Thank you.
So you're well ahead in time. Yeah. So very good time controlling.
There is not a lot to talk about. It's like I could
a lot to digest.
Statistic part of it, a lot. What is the point?
Thank you. And now we move on to our Q&A section. So we pretty much have 15 minutes for all the questions and answer the questions. Does any one of you have any questions about the presentation? Yeah.
So I have two questions for myself. No, sorry. Basically, I have two questions. One for you, Daisy. So one of the things that, thank you very much for your research. Very interesting, and I think like practically very important. That's something that I'm dealing with in my daily life with my students here, specifically with the students from China, because I know and I understand that lots of them look at studying in New Zealand as a way of investing into their future as for immigration and things. And also, it's very important for us here in New Zealand because all of these students have been invested a lot on in China, millions and millions of dollars if you calculate that. And it's like we get them all for free, 3 years of education, which they pay for, and they enjoy the work force that we have here that we are pretty much dependent on. So it's very important for us. But in terms of theory, what kind of theoretical framework do you think that will support your study the way that you did? So that's an important part also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I deliberately, thank you, Diaco, for asking the questions about the boring part of my research, but very important as well. I deliberately skipped that theories in order to save time because I want to share more about my findings. Actually, as I just mentioned, there are 3 theories involved in my study. So each theory explore from different aspects. For example, the value expectancy model explores their initial expectations and their actual encounters in their post-study transitional movement. So this is the first one. This model helps to understand the key drivers when international students initially choose New Zealand as their studying and living destinations, and how that decision evolved alongside their journey, and to what extent the expectancies been met or unmet. So the next one that I put pretty much a lot of focus on is the strong tie and weak ties in social network theory. So Granovator has categorized the frequency of personal contact as like often, rarely, or occasional, different levels. So my my research result shows that all those students who mobilize their close social network, the person literally means the person they interact very often, give them the quicker access to the employment, like getting a job done. But like a double-edged sword, this close social network also causes problem in exploitation. So strong and weak ties in social network definitely another strong support, theoretical support in my current study. Lastly is the cultural fusion theory. This theory actually explores students as a newcomer to a host society, how to adapt to the mainstream culture here in New Zealand. And also, meanwhile, it's not a one-way process. Meanwhile, how the large culture, the mainstream culture being changed or modified a little bit by their efforts. So these three theories that I think mostly related to my research. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For my second question, basically, I can see that it's exactly the question as Daisy has already asked in the chat window. So I will be very grateful, Abdul Razak, if you're able to answer that question. Very interesting. You have the same question. I think that's massive kind of thing.
So the question actually is for Abdul Razak is about how does that current pandemic situation is changing or probably have already changed the landscape of this religious migration in those SAARC countries.
Yeah, thank you, Scholar Deji. So it's a very good questions and the updated question, I think so, to adapt the time frame. It's actually what we are now looking I mean the policy dialogue of newspapers. It's a little bit the trend is in I mean the downward, not the upward. While we are conducting the research, that was the free time, normal time, and the situation was totally different from this pandemic, and that's why it was the upward trend. That means the migrants are the velocity was very fast, the religious purposes, but now it's a stuck position. Even every day, I look after the Daily Star, the Bangladeshi newspaper one, Dawn, the Times of India. But now it's the cluster based migration is happened. Cluster based means the bordering countries. I mean the India and Bangladesh, India and Nepal. But earlier, before the pandemic, we have seen the migration, the targeted India, all over the neighboring countries. But now it's only a little cluster like India, Bangladesh, and India, Nepal. But other countries is totally stuck. The same thing in Pakistan and India, it is totally stuck because the issue of Kashmir, the Special Act 373 from the Indian Constitution. After launching this act, it's totally still hold the border, and there is not a single. I said it. The bird migration, even a bird from Pakistan, they are not ready to migrate to India because the both party armies are so alert, and they think that that is also the natural spice. So that's why during the pandemic situation, every countries in SARC region, they are fighting their own existence rather than to switching from one place to others. The second things, these people are poor people. The last studies you see, the Global Economic Forum, they just I think few weeks ago they reported that 60% of global vulnerable people, 60%, they are living that region, and mostly in India, that region and mostly in India. And here the economic conditions, we are very lucky Bangladesh because recently we have make a very good ties with China, and that's why we are just I mean very much in a safe level our economy and the domestic production. But this case is very dangerous in other countries. That's why during the pandemic situation, whatever we have seen, the study, the upward trend, the religious migration, it is now in downward trend, and some cases it is totally stuck and stopped. Maybe it will be changed in near future. Thank you very much, Professor.
Yeah, and I think that also we have a question from Stephanie for me, asking about the prevalence of second factor issues in communication measures. Specifically, yes, that's exactly what is happening specifically with reverse coded items. When we have these reverse coded items and the way that people answer them and include them in their understanding of the frames, usually what happens is that we have a false second measurements there that I think in terms of methods and statistics
Yeah,
carry some parts of the variances that
all right.
those different observations that we had to them, and they form an extra unaccounted for factor that affects our measurements, but it's
Correct.
totally unaccounted for. And
True.
that's why I'm quite sure also based on our personal conversations. And also, I think partly I have got that from your ideas about that you opened my eyes basically to this area. Um, yeah, I think that if instead of having more reverse coded items, we try to measure with smaller number of directly targeted observations, we could have better and more reliable uh, measurements. But again, whatever measurements that we have, it's very important to go back at that and after 10 years and so on, review them. One interesting thing, I just say that and I finish um, my lecture about that. Now I'm doing lots of online studies. And so before, when I was doing offline studies like communication apprehension and so on, I could easily go back to 1970, 1978 and
Eight. Yeah.
80s and so on and code the things. But now I look at the studies from 2015 and I feel it's totally outdated. Like I even can't imagine, but
Yeah.
we didn't have, for example, TikTok at that time. We didn't have so many
No.
things that we have, like the timelines, news stories, those stories that people share on Instagram and those things were basically added in 2016, 17 to the whole platform. So all of these things make you to review those items every now and then because the world is changing in a much, much faster pace compared to before. And with that, the measurements of the criteria and phenomena that we see around us. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, thank you, Professor Ramani. This is the absolutely, I think, the fueling nerves of this study that you point out. First
Yeah,
on the significance analysis, and second one because every time the time is changing. Just few hours ago, it was very vital. Now it is obsolete because
yeah,
the whole world is changing very quickly and very
yes,
rapidly. So
yeah,
that's why our team already we have adapted and thinking the second phase of this study just to include the significance part, and we are going to analyze, I think the next time and next study it will reveal the significance analysis on study R studio, because
yeah,
we find out and locate three families in Pakistan, two families in Nepal, and in Bangladesh, because this is my birthplace, 10 families they are returning back,
yeah,
and we are interested to observe them a frequent matter of time, say 6 months or 1 year, and to observe what is their motivations, because now it is very clear for us because we are accepted 10 million Rohingyas in Cox's Bazar,
yeah,
our eastern part. So
yes,
we are observing them clearly and very closely. So
yes,
compare that, we can make another study in that part. The religious migrate people, they return back, and then we can our studio analysis, and then it will be maybe more significant and the association, relation, whatever you trying to say. And the second part is also I accept and fully fine with you. And thank you very much, Professor Ram.
Thank you very much. I also appreciate it.
Thank you. So I think we're very well in terms of time control. 2 more minutes left. Any
Okay,
more
can I
questions?
add 2 points? Yeah,
Sure.
I just heard the story from Daisy and also Abd. Is that right? Your name?
Yeah.
Yeah. My study is a little bit connected with yours. And
yeah.
would like to think about your research or your study from 2 important points, just because yours is connected with immigration and migration and so on, such kind of things. And last night, I also heard a study about this. I think about a lot of their concepts they raised. The one is about, is a kind of identity. And both of yours connect with a hybrid identity. Not only Chinese, but also is a hybrid identity between the Chinese and the New Zealanders. And as well as, and here the second study, yours also, maybe if you think about the third space, that should be good for you to think about why these people return back to their homeland.
Right.
Yeah. A new idea is a third space. Third space is very important for the immigrants to think about their homeland and the immigrant countries and so on. Yes, that's my 2 points. Thank you.
Very
Thanks.
good.
Yeah. I think Professor Daisy, you can start, and
Yeah.
then I can. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a very good point made. Yes, actually, in the last part of my research, which hasn't yet been finalized, I do want to discuss about the home returning. So just as Song Mei just mentioned, like the third space, not just related to your host country, but also like the returning chain. Why does this happen? As I put into one chapter in my thesis, I will discuss that this is not a recent problem. This has been existing for a while for all the migrations. Like once they've been through these challenges, they already reach their destination, reach their goals. Why do they still want to plan to return? There might multiple reasons behind. The current pandemic situation is a kind of like accelerator to bring all these issues, quicker, happening faster, but there are reasons behind their returning change. But it's definitely worth exploring. Yeah, for migration studies.
I just agree with Diago's idea about the theories of the research. That's very important. So I just, remind, maybe it's important for you to add something about such kind of theories that make your research very robust. That's my idea. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And Abdul Razak, would you like to answer your perspective?
Scholar Song Mei, if I miss the spell, I'm sorry.
No. So, it's not sorry. I just,
but I did my PhD in Shanghai Jiaotong University. My supervisor always told me Abdura. So it is very difficult from you people to spell the double spelling, say Razak, double Z. You can just, your tone is plain. So that's no problem. Okay. Scholar Song Mei, you raised a good question, but the main motto of our study was, the Donald Trump, he don't like the Facebook because the policy from the Facebook, they always emphasize against Trump activities. But Joe Biden loved it very much because the policy of Facebook always turned out in favor of Joe Biden. The same case actually want to see what about the religious migration issues and the leading newspaper, because this SAARC region, the leading newspapers, they are guided and motivated the policymakers, like the Times of Global Times in China. The incident in Ladakh, Indian Army and Chinese Army, we have seen very good fight, intellectual fight in between Times of India and Global Times China. because these both newspaper has a power to attack the policymakers. That's why our interest was how the low-level targeted countries, I mean Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, what their newspapers are targeting and the policy adopting the prescription given by India or prescription given by China or their own prescription. It was our own motto to see that. And that's why we found that the paper, they are actually some cases in volatile, some cases in they just want to see what the political figures are trying to say, and they just reflect that one. They are not so strong like Global Times of China, even New York Times. They are directly guide to the president. So that's why whatever you saying the other migration issues, it was the minor case to us. The major case was how the leading newspapers actually marketing it to give the navigation points to the policymakers. And in terms and to clarify that what the real factors are actually we found in the real cases. But
Okay,
thank you for
guys,
your
thank
question.
you very much.
Good. Thank you.
I'm really enjoying
Thanks.
the
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
I think that
Yeah,
we are
okay.
long overdue in terms of time. So, and we will have the closing ceremony in 10
Oh,
minutes.
sure.
10 minutes.
Like,
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to see Stephanie there because.
No, no, no. That's great. That's great. Thank you, Professor. That's great.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Good
So,
night, everyone.
Thank
yeah, I
you.
enjoyed
Yeah,
that.
I'll see
Thank
you in 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.